This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello everyone and welcome to the DTV Digest, the podcast which brings you reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema and instead went straight to DVD, Blu-ray or streaming media. I'm your host Mike Parkin, and joining me tonight are Richard Hawes.
Hello everyone.
And Stephen Lockridge.
Hello.
And in tonight's show we are going to be covering the new London Gangster movie Nemesis. Then we have a new horror movie called Rose, A Love Story. And then Will Bentley will be joining me to talk about The Night and Shortcut. Our short shot this week is Escape from North Korea. And in the DTV throwback, Matti Budrevich and David Wayne will be joining me and Rich to talk about Wolves of Wall Street. So without further ado, let's crack on. Our first review then is Nemesis. John Morgan is a London crime boss who's been living in self-imposed exile in Turkey. When he is invited to return to speak at an investors' meeting, he intends to use the opportunity to tie up some loose ends, but instead provides a target of opportunity for some people with long memories and a score to settle. Interesting cast in this one, Rich. Starting off with Billy Murray in the title role, well, not a title role, but in the main role of John Morgan. Also in the mix, we've got Nick Moran as a London copper who's got a score to settle of his own, which sort of causes him no end of trouble, basically. And then we've got Bruce Payne playing Damien. Is it Damien Osborne?
Damien Osborne, yeah.
Damien
Special
Osborne.
guest star Bruce Payne.
Indeed. And
turns up he's there for one scene.
He's there for one scene, but he makes a hell of an impression in this film, I think. But before I get into all this, let's hear some of your thoughts on this one.
I've been pondering this one because it's a film I went into with certain expectations and it didn't meet them, and I think that's my fault for perhaps not like watching the trailer or something ahead of time. And so recently we'd watched Vengeance with Billy Murray, which was a film that was originally shot like several years ago, and it ultimately got released quite recently, which has a very similar theme, but is completely different. So it's an interesting counterpoint or an interesting double feature for these two, because they're both about Billy Murray. He's a gangster. He was living abroad, and he's come back, and things don't work out as he's planning anyway. So the first one, he in Vengeance or Acceptance, which was then retitled Vengeance, he came back because his daughter had been assaulted. He's not a family man in that movie. He's very much a soul. He lives by himself. He's on the run by himself, as far as I remember. He's not got good relationships. Completely different in this one. He's got very strong relationships with his wife and his daughter. Very good relationship with his daughter. Yep. It's his wider family that there's some more problems with. So he's got his brother that there's quite a lot of animosity with, and he's obviously got, as being a gangster, obviously he does have a very fraught relationship with authorities. So Nick Moran is representing that case. So he comes back into the community. Someone's told Nick Moran's police officer, whose name is Frank Conway. Someone's told him that he's back. So Conway's, back to make a scene, shows him up, and the ball is sort of set rolling for a series of events. Now, the film it's a British gangster movie through and through, but it's not the kind of gangster movie we're used to. And I say that in terms of the way it's made, the way it's filmed. It's much more like a play than it is a movie. It's all about long dialogue scenes. So, for instance, we mentioned the Bruce Payne appearance earlier. These are sort of key stepping stone moments in the film. They have these conversations, but that appearance that's a 7-minute conversation, approximately.
Yep.
And and a lot of the other conversations are similarly long. And that was a bit much for me at the time of watching it. And I'll also say we watched this on a screener which had a massive logo watermark on it, which was itself very distracting. So it made it a bit harder to enjoy the film more objectively there. So what I did was I went back and I listened to the movie. So I didn't watch it again. I just played it and I listened to the characters and what the story was happening. And I actually quite like what they've done with it. The first half, so the first half of the movie, the first 40 minutes is setting everything up, which will then happen in the second part of the movie. So it's all leading up to a dinner party, and the dinner party happens from the 40-minute mark. And so we get, it's exposition, but it's not overly heavy-handed, I don't think. He's come back, he goes the thing, he meets the thing, that they're talking about the dinner party and the daughter, they talk about his daughter and his daughter's girlfriend, which here's another thing. I quite like the fact that they don't make a big thing about the fact that his daughter's gay. He's very progressive. Yeah. It is. He's not fussed about it at all. It's not. There's none of this. Gangster movies would typically be probably the most homophobic genre. I would have said, misogynistic and stuff. Yeah. So that is that's quite good about it. And anyway, the way they handle it, perhaps not so sure, but they're sort of setting up. There's a lot of foreshadowing and stepping stones or whatever, which then pays off in the second half. And I think if you take it as a different kind of a film experience, don't go in expecting Rise of the Foot Soldier, 4 or whatever, because the aesthetic is completely different. Then I think you can get something out of it.
Also, it sort of mixes genres, doesn't it? I mean, you mentioned the dinner scene. It does sort of slide into almost sort of home invasion territory after that. It does sort of mix it up a bit. It's not your, as you've quite rightly said, it's not your typical sort of gangster setup at all.
No, I mean, it reminded me of a few different things. So give some examples. So Gate Crash, which we watched recently, that was a play that had been turned into a movie. That was long conversations and stuff. So a very similar kind of thing there. Reservoir Dogs, obviously, gangster movie that is quite, play-like, limited locations and stuff. I'm not saying this is in any way close to Reservoir Dogs, but it's sort of, in terms of its low budget production, roots, that's kind of a thing to draw it closer to. There was another film called Tango 1 with Vincent Regan, which coincidentally I watched recently, which came out a couple of years ago. But that's another film about a gangster who comes back, and that is more.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Do you remember that? Based on the Stephen Leather book.
Yeah. We covered that. Yeah.
Oh, did you cover it? That's based on a Stephen Leather book, and that again, it's not action heavy, but there's probably a bit more going on than there is in this. There's a bit with a car explosion and stuff, and that's about as much action as you get in this, apart from some tussles, towards the end. But more tension. And the other thing it reminded me of was Gangs of London, which has kind of raised the bar on British gangster thrillers and action, and the whole thing about the relationships and the family and the dynamics and stuff like that, and people sort of screwing each other over and different things like that. So all those things sort of come to mind. And I think, this doesn't compare, favorably to Gangs of London, and it doesn't compare favorably to quite a few other films, to be fair. But if you approach it as a completely different kind of take on the gangster genre, like imagine like a theater experience. The film has got a score which to me doesn't work. The score is a bit it doesn't fit quite right, and it's a bit repetitive. I think if the film didn't have the score in as much as it does, if it was a bit more restrained and it allowed scenes to play out more like just a conversation, I think in some cases that might have worked better. I mean, obviously this is a movie, so it's got those things around it. But I just keep going back to this feeling of like I felt like I was watching something more. I don't like to use the word stagey because that's got negative connotations, and if I say theatrical, it makes you think of a musical. But it's more like that kind of dinner theatre. I don't know how to best relate it, but it's certainly a unique take on the gangster genre, I would say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's something we've discussed before, Rich, as well, about these sort of films where you're sort of like struggling to work out who you're actually supposed to be rooting for, as well. Obviously, sort of Billy Murray's John Morgan is the main protagonist.
Yes,
and everything's sort of circling around him. But how much sympathy you're actually sort of meant to have for him is another matter. I suppose it's going back to like Bob Hoskins in The Long Good Friday. So like, yeah, he's kind of the victim, but also he's the instigator of his own problems.
Yeah,
I think that is here. I mean, for example, what he does with Mickey Dean. The guy who supposedly grasped to Nick Moran's character. I didn't do nothing, mate. I didn't do nothing.
Yeah,
all that sort of stuff.
Well, that's the kind of
he takes such glee out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not sort of like I'd have thought he wouldn't want to get his hands dirty. He'd have told his boy sort of Eddie to do it.
Yeah.
But he's like, no, I'm doing this sort of thing, and then taking great pleasure out of it.
Well, that's the thing. I was I think when we talked about some gangster movies before, I think I said it in like Silent Night. Is you're following this bad guy basically, and you're in their shoes, you're with them, you're taking their journey, and you can easily sympathize with them, and then so you really have to have a scene that reminds you, that sort of punches and said, hang on a minute, just remember, this is a bad guy. This is not a heroic character. So that was quite an important moment in the film to have that, as not just he's a cocky guy or whatever, but that he really is. He really has done really nasty, bad things.
The revelations at the end, when you find out exactly what sort of business this guy's actually in, all bets are off. Then it's like. But even then, the film sort of say, no, this guy's the victim. Help him out. Sort of show some sympathy for him with this situation.
Well, it's ambiguous.
It's not for him, for his family and stuff.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of ambiguity there, especially as you get to like the end, the final moments of it. I think that's what's quite smart about it. And if you approach it in the right way, that's actually all really good stuff. I mean, you could watch it and say, well, come on, where's the action? Where's the sort of, I want a big movie experience here kind of thing. But there's a lot going on in the script and in the performances that I think does really work well, especially say on revisiting. So there's some really meaty roles in here. Lucy Arden as Zoe, who's kind of the outsider coming into the family. When you first introduce to her, it's kind of like it seems inconsequential, and that's the introducing of the relationship with his daughter, who's played by Billy Murray's character's daughter in the movie is played by Ambra Moore, who's the granddaughter of Roger Moore, and it's you kind of think it's going to be about when they get to the dinner party and their relationship and how the parents are going to react and all that sort of thing. But it's not. It's not at all that. But Lucy Arden's character, they do another scene where she appears, which is in a scene which is, well, I felt was a really unnecessary and quite exploitive scene of, I'll just say it's a nudity in the movie without wishing to spoil it. But there's stuff going on in that scene which at the time feels a bit perhaps stilted and pointless or awkward, but pays off later. And when you get into the final act, all these revelations and things and lots of character stuff going on, I think that's where the real strength is, in that final act.
Yeah, I think so, definitely.
And of course Nick Moran, because Nick Moran has his own storyline and cutaways, and he's having long conversations as well.
Yeah, so one of those long conversations. He has two halves of a long conversation with a bartender,
played by Ricky Grover.
Exactly. So Ricky Grover is, I suppose, quite well-known stand-up comedian. He used to do this sort of comedy circuit, sort of back in the sort of 2000s, I think. He was sort of well-known, and then he sort of got into film. But yeah, that was quite interesting seeing him pop up in this, but Bruce Payne, that scene with Bruce Payne, I absolutely loved. I can imagine it sort of playing out like that. Some guy on the street sort of going, "So Mr. Osborne would like to have a word with you, sir, to welcome you back." Being dragged in. But the what impressed me about that scene is the way both of them were dressed. Now, I've started listening recently to a podcast by a friend of mine. It's called To Die For, and it's basically the two people doing it are costume designers looking at horror films from a costume point of view, and it's something I've never really considered.
That's quite interesting.
It is. It's really interesting. But that was sort of playing in my head in this scene, because you look at the way that Damien Osborne's dressed, and he's got this really smart suit with the cravat and everything, and sort of open collar. And then you look at sort of John Morgan, and he sat there he looks like a 16-year-old going for a job interview, in this suit with the way his tie's done and everything. He's just sort of sitting there twiddling his thumb, and it just looked, it really looked, that you could see the divide between them just to the way they were dressed, which was, just a really interesting sort of thing to take note of, really.
Yeah, and I think that's clearly there's clearly been great intent in that. I mean, Bruce Payne's cravat even has its own credit at the end.
Really?
They've gone to great lengths to sort of get these particular costume items and stuff. Yeah, to demonstrate the sort of divide that they are. That he's come in, he's the big man, but is he? He's kind of not at the mercy of, but he's kind of. There's this bigger player in town that he's got to make sure that he doesn't upset too much.
Doesn't tread on the toes of,
yeah.
So I like that sort of thing going on.
Yeah, and the what was I going to say about? So I thought Ricky Grover did pretty well with that, Parman scene, and Nick Moran's he's giving it his all. He's not phoning it in. It reminded me of what he did in Avengement. But a completely opposite character. In Avengement, he was the nastiest of the nasty, bad guys. Sort of, not a nasty piece of work, basically, in that movie. In this one, he's kind of angry and ruined and broken. He's not, he's very angry with, and he's the cop who wants to take down John Morgan.
Yeah, he's the loose cannon.
He basically is
not playing by the rules anymore.
He's not playing by the rules, but they do a lot with his character, and that again, it's kind of all little seeds that are sown, and it all leads towards that ending.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it does work. The story does work, and it does all fit together, even though some of it's familiar. And that it doesn't feel like the kind of it doesn't feel like the typical gangster movie that we've become accustomed to. From with like Craig Fairbrass and stuff, but it's Billy Murray's really good, by the way. I should say he's basically doing Billy Murray. He's kind of he's in familiar shoes. He's playing a very similar character to some that he's played before. I quite enjoy that, but it is kind of some of the other performers in the film, like Lucy Arden, who really have a lot more to work with to in terms of this is kind of something that will propel them a bit more. Amber Moore unfortunately doesn't get a huge amount to work with. Nick Moran, it's a nice reminder again of what a great actor he is. Ricky Grover, it's nice to see. I want to give a mention to because at the end credits there's a song by Talia Dean, a title song, which is good, but it's like a Bond theme. which is fine, but it seems like an unusual thing to sort of end your movie reminding you of James Bond. But it did make me think, wouldn't it be great if Shogun Films did a James Bond riff? Because this is the first film by Shogun Films, which is cool. I mean, I love their new logo and stuff. That all looks really great. And I know they're well into, they've got lots of action stuff coming down the line. So I was thinking, yeah, because and if they do a James Bond movie, get Talia Dean to do another one for that.
Absolutely. It's time for the scores. Rich?
The scores. Yes. Well, I'm going to go. It's going to be. It's going to be a 6 for me, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you on a 6 for this one. I think it is a bit too long for what it is. Some of the line deliveries don't land the way I think they intended to. But other than that, I thought there's a lot of good stuff in here. As I say, it's interesting sort of the way it sort of switches genres towards the end as well. And yeah, it's interesting sort of following this guy, thinking, oh, poor guy, he's just come to London to tie up a few loose ends, and then you sort of get the truth later on, and you just don't know where your sympathies lie at the end of it. So yeah, it's complicated, shall we say? So
I just want to say the Bruce Payne gets a brilliant line: "A dark web lined with silk." Yes, that's right. Which I thought was great. There's a lot of great little bits in the scripts and stuff. I think. It's a novel film, and if you're into British gangster movies, I think it's not Dave Courtney level. It's definitely up above. It's not quite Craig Fairbrass, but it's worth a look.
Absolutely. So 2 6s for Nemesis. Our next review is Rose, a love story. A young woman named Rose lives in an isolated location with her husband, Sam. While she works on her novel, Sam tries to treat the violent illness that afflicts her. Their tenuous grip on a normality is threatened, however, when a stranger arrives in need of help. So this is a British film. And I think this looks rather good in terms of the sort of visual style of it. It's quite sort of stark, the sort of the location that these people are living in, which is kind of weird. I mean, England's not that big a place. You can throw a rock and hit a house usually. So they found the one location where that they can actually be secluded. So,
Wales.
Is it in Wales?
Well, I don't know if it's supposed to be set in Wales. It was definitely shot in Wales. Yeah. I don't know I honestly don't know whether it's supposed to be actually set there, because when he goes to the petrol station, the girl there is not. She doesn't have a Welsh.
She's
accent.
not Welsh.
Not Welsh, that's for sure.
No.
So, Steve, what do you make of Rose?
Right now, when this
rolls up his sleeves.
No, because it wasn't terrible. It's shot really well. I thought the idea was lovely. It's just such a slow pace on it. It's not going to be for everyone.
That's fair.
And basically, the first hour and 10 is the same thing over and over again. Have a day, wash, repeat. Have a day, wash, repeat. Then someone else turns up. I mean, it's not something we haven't seen before. Mm-hmm. Someone else turns up, disrupts the dynamic, and then it's over. Normally something like this, I'd say they normally turn up after half an hour, 40 minutes, give a bit more character to it. This, she turns up for the last 10 minutes, and then it's over like that. Like I say, it was lovely shot, really good. They made use of the setting really well, I think, because it's basically just the house, petrol station, and the woods, and that's it. You don't get anything else. You get your two main protagonists, the stranger coming in, and the two other people in the whole film. That's it. And it does hold your attention, but then it just starts to just bit repetitive. and it doesn't give you. To me, it didn't give me enough information about what was wrong with her, and because you don't find out till literally the last scene, but there's no build up to that. There's no showing what's wrong with her or hints about what's wrong with her. She just seemed fine and a little bit pale, and that was about it. And then, couple little things that are odd, but it's only very slight. Just like involving leeches, and it doesn't elaborate on it at all. So it just seemed quite sane.
Yeah, Rich, over to you.
Yeah, it does. It is a film that lacks exposition or explanation, and does rely on your curiosity and interest in speculating what might be going on here for basically the whole running time. So you've got to be you've got to get engaged with it, and if you're not getting engaged with it by the end of the first act, then you're probably not going to get there. I did become engaged by the end of the first act, and it was, to an extent, it is the cinematography and the location, and the exteriors and stuff, the woodlands and the two main characters. I was quite intrigued about what was going on with them, interested to find out. But I can understand that some people might go, well, come on, you've got to give us something here. It's all very vague and a bit different, but at the same time, I think it's familiar enough that you do depending on who's watching it, you do get a sense of what might be happening, and it's ultimately a very familiar story. When I was watching it, the first one that came out and came to mind was a film we watched very recently, which was What Lies Below, which was another film about a couple, in this case, a mother and a daughter, but a couple of characters and a third person coming into and that's where, like Steve's saying, the disruptive person normally comes in much earlier. In that film, it was like right at the beginning, basically, and in this one, it's much more towards the end. There was another one called Shadows of the Dead, which came out from Film 2000, like 2004, which was really low budget, couple in a cabin, slowly dying, basically, I think, in that film, or turning into, I can't remember what it was exactly, but they start to decompose or whatever, and it's about their relationship and trying to hold themselves together as they're going to die. A bit of a cabin feverish kind of thing, but much more of a drama. I remember that being quite striking at the time. This is like a bigger, much more polished, different kind of take, much more polished look than that. Another one that came into mind was Shadowlands, which we also watched recently, which was, again, that kind of had that, there's something in the woods, there's something that comes out of the woods and infects a character or characters. Yeah, there was a similar kind of thing there. And the other one was, which I think is the most pronounced influence for me, was Let the Right One In.
I think you're stretching a bit there, mate.
Yeah.
What with Let the Right One In?
Yeah.
Really? That was because I thought that was really quite apparent. I mean, the whole thing about, I don't really want to go into it too much because it might spoil it, but there's a whole thing about being a caregiver in that. I'm not talking about the relationship between the two children part of Let the Right One In. I'm talking about the older man taking care of the child thing. That part was, I thought. I kind of see where you're coming from with that, but I just think Let the Right One In is just far too. It's probably one of their horror films, to be fair. So, I get where you're coming from slightly with that.
Okay.
Mike, what about you?
Well, there are bits of this I really like. There's certain scenes like his confrontation with the driver who turns up. The relationship he's got with this guy to bring him sort of some billy cans full of petrol once a month. And this guy turns up who's like supposedly the nephew of the guy who's supposed to be doing it, and he hasn't got a clue, and he ends up ripping him off. I thought that scene was actually pretty good, and I think he made a mistake later on when he found him. He should have just fucking killed him, basically. Just got it over with. But so I agree with the lack of context. It also sort of puts into, makes you wonder about Sam, whether or not he's, what is he actually doing to try and help his wife? Is he some sort of armchair enthusiast? Is he an actual scientist? I don't think it actually sort of, we get to learn what his actual credentials are in this situation.
Does he need any credentials? I think
I don't.
Because what's he actually doing to sort of help her condition, or is he just sort of helping her hide it?
Can I tell you off air?
Okay. We'll come off air with that one.
All right. Okay. Cool. And again, I think because of this sort of situation, a lot of what happens in the film happens because he's not mean-spirited enough. He's not ruthless enough, and as a result, things happen. The girl who turns up.
I initially thought she was the woman from or the young lady from the petrol station.
All right.
But then I realised, no, actually, she's supposed to be a completely different character. Because there was when he goes to the petrol station, she's like asking questions and like being evasive, and I wondered, did she get curious? And she's come out to try and look for him or something. But no, it's a completely different character. It's in a completely different situation. But I didn't mind her. I didn't mind her at all. I did think she was a bit ungrateful and just being confrontational, especially the vulnerable position that she was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and it made you wonder. No wonder she ran away from home. It's like, oh God.
But again, with her character, there's stuff that's implied that's not actually made explicit. You kind of have to bring stuff. You have to bring stuff to this film. It doesn't give you it all. You kind of have to fill in the blanks and stuff. And I actually quite like that about it. It was kind of a different. If rather than being spoon-fed the information, you have to kind of go along with it and feel I'm a visitor here, and I'm not. None of these characters, because normally there's a character in the movie who you're supposed to be, as being the outsider, identify with, which is usually that third character who comes in. And in this case, to an extent, that's her at the end of the movie. We are that character because she's asking questions and whatnot. But you still don't get you still don't get much of an answer out of it. So it doesn't actually change the dynamics of how you respond to the film as an audience member.
To me, that wasn't the thing. It wasn't the thing you didn't get the answer, because it was kind of obvious what the setup was. It was just, you've got an hour and 20 minutes before anything else happens. It's just the same thing over and over again. And it just didn't, like I say, it just didn't grab me at all. I just felt a bit like Groundhog Day, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
There's no moving away from it. There's no ramping up any real excitement apart from when he, goes to pick the petrol up or whatever. And that was about it,
No, they do highlight the monotony and the isolation and the repetitiveness of the whole.
Yeah, and I think that is the point, isn't it?
Because they have that situation where she's saying, where the wife's saying, "Don't ruin it. Don't ruin everything we've worked for," and whatever. And I'm thinking, what have you worked for? I can't really see what's so great got going on here.
It's a comfortable routine, I guess, is what she's sort of aiming for. A couple of scenes worth mentioning. There's a bit where the girl looks out the window and sees Sam climbing out of the ice cold pool or the pond in the garden. Obviously that's where he goes to sort of wash and bathe or whatever. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's fucking cold. Yeah. So hats off to the actor there for getting in that bloody water. That's for sure.
Why did he lie about it though?
About what?
Because she was saying, "Oh, you're wet" or whatever, and he was like, "Oh no, it's nothing. I've just done."
I think he I think he was just trying to wash like the smell of the cigarette off him.
That's a pretty extreme way of washing it off. But yeah. Oh, because she possibly would have had a heightened sense of smell. So
well, she did bollock him for having the cigarette, didn't she? She said, "Look, I can smell it on you. I can smell it on your breath." And that was the only thing I could think of that he's tried washing. I don't know.
I like the way things happen at the end. I must admit, the fact that it happened so quickly. I imagine, yes, that's exactly how it would play out. It's not protracted. It's going to be a situation that just snowballs so quickly. You can't get on top of it, and until it's too late.
It is kind of an interesting contrast with Nemesis, because, like you were saying, in the end of that, things take quite a like a horrific kind of turn.
Yeah.
And the same is true here, because this is, you could market it as a horror movie, but it's not really a horror movie. It's more of a drama. But then
it's almost like Misery up to a point, isn't it? It's sort of,
Yeah.
But then you get the ending. The other thing I like is the because of the kind of film this is underneath. There's that sort of nice shout out to Hammer at the end of it when you've got the guys turning up, and it's like put pitchforks and burning torches in their hands, and you've got the ending of just about every Hammer horror movie, which I thought was quite good as well. It's a pity we didn't get to see that next scene, which is a shame.
Well, that's all to do with, I think, the whole speculative, you've got to bring something to it. You've got to imagine what might happen next and stuff. Exactly. that they seems to be the underlying, or the approach to the whole movie is, we're not going to give you too much information. We want you to sure. Fill in the blanks, as I think I said before. I think that's what they were going for. I ended up quite liking it.
I agree. Yeah, I must admit, it is slow pace. It's not going to be for everyone, but at the same time, it's very well made. And when it needs to be, there are sort of decent little sort of bits at the end. So yeah, scores on the doors then, guys. Steve, over to you first.
I'll give it a 6.
A 6, Rich.
A 7 from me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 6 as well. I did enjoy it, but I think it is a bit too long for what it is. Just needs something else.
Yeah.
Just another scene or two. Just that's actually really ironic, isn't it? It's me saying, "Oh, it's too long," and then saying it just needs a bit extra. Maybe cut some of the sort of middle section out and maybe put in a bit more sort of context or something. I don't know, but. Anyway, you know what they say, those who can't direct end up reviewing. So there you go. So 2 6s and a 7 for Rose, a Love Story. Our next review then is The Night. Babak and Neda Nadari are an Iranian couple now living in the US. After a dinner party with friends, they are forced to stop their journey home and spend the night in a hotel, along with their baby daughter, Shabham. Even though the pair are exhausted, they are not going to get much sleep, as they are beset with strange sounds and visions, linking to dark secrets they are hiding from each other. Now, this film, it took me a while to realize that actually this film was set in America. I just thought it was like an ambassador's hotel in Iran. Even though the concierge is speaking English, I was thinking, okay, but that doesn't mean it's not in Iran. But no, apparently this film is actually set in the US. So there's that. Apparently this film is the only US film to actually get a cinema release in Iran since the Iranian Revolution. And you can kind of see why, because all the protagonists are Iranians.
Iranian, yeah.
And so I can kind of see how how it would get past the censors, basically. So this is quite a long film, Will. It's 1 hour 45 minutes, which is at least 15 minutes too long for this sort of material.
Yeah, at least. I mean, it does. It's pacing wise. It's maybe that could be like a cultural thing in the way that stories are told, but it's very, very nuanced and slow.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it takes a while for them to even get to the hotel, because we got the dinner party situation. That was quite interesting as well. That game they were playing about, sort of, if you're working for the mafia or a killer, it's kind of like like a cerebral version of Cluedo. Is really weird, quite interesting.
Yeah, it was like I thought it was a kind of jazzed up. Is it Blink Murder or Wink Murder? When you're at a dinner party and have you ever heard of that game? You all sit
I've
around
heard of
the
that
table.
one. No.
It's like it's quite a good one. You all sit around the table and the murderer has to wink at a victim with no one else but the victim.
Without they actually seeing them do it.
Yeah, and then the victim kind of dies, and people have to work out
who was it? Who did it?
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. And there's like a rule, like you can only make a certain amount of accusations, and then you're out or something. If you make an accusation and you're wrong, then you're out, or something like that. I think it was like that, but it was weird because they seem to have kind of, when the film starts, it's like all the people, it's like they're at the end of the game and they're just about to do the reveal thing.
Yeah, it was a bit strange, but interesting. Because at first, because you're just hearing the voices, you have no idea what's going on. It sounds very ominous, at first.
Very. But what is it? Everyone go to sleep. Mafia wake up and kill someone. Doctor wake up and save someone.
Yeah.
And then everybody wake up, sort of thing. And it was like at the start, because it's over, because the visuals it's over is your main guy looking in the mirror. He's got toothache, but it's obviously and you're kind of thinking, what is this, like a hit movie or something?
Yeah,
and then it
bust
goes
out some guns.
Yeah, and then it goes to the dinner table, and it's like the host is going, oh, actually no, this is what happened, and right, okay, who do you think it is? And I guess it's a setup to sort of. It's really odd, isn't it? Because there's like 5 people at the dinner, and they obviously 2 of them are the protagonists, and it's just there to just to sort of clue you into who they are, to build their kind of characters from this weird disjointed from the middle of a dinner party game, and just to try and see how, when they talk to each other and respond in a light-hearted dinner party game, but they're really not. There's cracks there, but and he's been quite tacit in his responses, and to her and stuff. But it all's kind of, you're sort of looking at it thinking, yeah, there's probably problems there with this couple already, just because of the way that it's all a bit forced and a bit, So I thought it was quite, it was all that kind of. Very subtle scripting and manners. Bearing in mind, it's also in a language that it's subtitled, so it's in a language you don't, you're not really understanding.
Yeah, not many Iranian films pass our way.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and I don't speak, I don't know Farsi and stuff, but it's like it's setups go. They were really ladling it on. I mean, they were really kind of building it slowly, and then obviously by the time when they get in the car, they're giving it to each other both barrels, basically.
It's quite amazing. Yes, I mean, and it's very relatable, I think, as well. I mean, I think we've all probably been at parties or dinner parties where one person has possibly drunk a little bit too much than the other person would like.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like bit of a sort of terse conversation on the way home, and I think part of it as well is one of the things that the problem I have not exactly a problem with, but sort of the main male character, I should say, which is Babak. He's a bit of a dick.
Yes,
I think he's a bit of a dick.
He's rude.
he's just rude, and he's pig-headed, and yeah, we'll get onto some of the other things. By the way, I'll just sort of say for our listeners, this may contain spoilers. This review, we may get into bits. I certainly want to get into the final scene later on. So yeah, there may be spoilers ahead. We'll try and flag them when we come up to them. But there you go. So we got this couple and their baby on a long drive home, wherever we now have no idea where they live, but it's long enough that sort of Nida is sort of saying maybe we should just turn back, stay the night at a friend's house, and he's going, no, we've already said goodbye. You know, I'm not going to be going back. Going, actually, do you mind if we can crash? Yeah, so they end up spending the night in this hotel. We've spent a lot of time in hotels over the years, I'm sure, and they're all reasonably creepy. I think sort of sleeping sort of side by side with sort of total strangers. You know, people running up and down the corridors late at night and all that goings. So you can definitely sympathise with some of the things that this couple have put through.
Yeah, I mean, it is like a I think, I don't know whether it picked me up, but it just now when I was saying it's not the Overlook from The Shining, but it is weird. I mean, and it's quiet. I mean, it's like the middle of the night and stuff. But it's like the pictures that he notices.
Yeah,
it's really weird, off kilter, because they look at first like they should be just, it's a conventional kind of place. It's not some weird boutique hotel with loads of trendy, unsettling art. But then when you kind of look closer at the kind of very ordinary looking pictures, they're like really weird.
It's almost like Hieronymus Bosch kind of stuff, isn't it? Some of them. Is one in their room is just like a giant head with like sort of people in its mouth and all this sort of stuff. It's like really freaky.
Yeah, it was the first one he noticed that got me was the one by the lift. The guy's reflection that's the wrong, facing the wrong way.
Yeah.
And it's just, and he sort of sees it, and it's like, it's stuff like that just you don't need when you've got a toothache and you're having a massive row with your wife.
Yeah, you're trying to get your baby to sleep as well.
Yeah. And you're stuck in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
it's very weird.
Yeah, I must admit, a lot of the stuff that he goes through, I would have just slept through. I would absolutely have slept through. People banging on the door, yeah, fine. Yeah, people running up and down, sort of footsteps on the ceiling. No, you would not.
It's a hotel.
It would not wake me up at all, I doubt.
Yeah.
But
the
ghost would have to try harder, basically, if they want to mess with me in that sort of situation. There is one weird thing that happens in this, and I may have skipped this, but I don't know if you picked up on this. Is the business about the tattoos on their wrists?
Yeah, no, I saw that because that was the conversation that she had when she explained why she got it.
Yeah.
Why they had, and they were they're two halves. They're like a little jigsaw.
Yeah.
But what was it you noticed about?
Well, I was just wondering where they came from, because at first, I noticed she's sort of looking at it weirdly, but and I thought it was a bit weird for I don't know if it's a cultural thing not to have tattoos in Iran, but it seemed like quite an elaborate design.
It was. I mean, I think that's why there was a bit of. I mean, the whole, the thing was they were emigres. They've left and gone to the States, which is, is probably, I think we could be really reasonably confident, is frowned on.
Yeah, especially going to America of all places.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not. I don't think that culturally the sort of the kind of it's frowned on. It's not the thing to do. I don't think tattoos are either, quite frankly. But I mean, because at first I thought, that was like some sort of a Persian thing.
Yeah, and I thought it was some sort of cutesy sort of marriage thing. As you said, it's like they're both carrying two halves of this symbol on their wrist.
But it's not. But she actually said, because she said, because a friend said, "Oh, what is it?" And she said, "I don't know. I got it from the tattooist catalog." And then
right.
later on in the film, she picks up on it and goes, "Oh, do you think it's when obviously when things are really getting out of control, and they're starting to think, they're starting to realise they're trapped.
Yeah.
They're stuck in the hotel, and what's more, they're stuck in that time in that place." And they've got no control over, the normal rules of time have been suspended. And she's saying, "Do you think it's the tattoos? Do you think it's some kind of curse?" So I don't think it was like an Iranian or Persian thing at all.
No.
I think they kind of looked they looked almost like Indian, like when people paint, when people paint the henna.
Yeah.
It was it was a very kind of intricate design like that, But because I was, to be honest, maybe the whole thing came down to maybe it was that maybe they had invited something.
There is, I think possibly, and this sort of the penultimate scene, or the scene at the end when she rolls over in bed, and she no longer has the tattoo. This sort of, the camera sort of focuses on her wrist for a second, and it's like, it's sort of faded away basically, which is quite interesting, and that sort of bears out with what she said and what she's sort of confessed to, I guess.
Yeah, because I mean, it's obviously, spoiler alert for anyone who wants to remain surprised by what's happening. Essentially, it's about guilt and secrets.
Yes.
Like all of their woes and troubles are about guilt and secrets. And we obviously may spill what their secrets are further down the line in our review. But it's and that, to be honest with you, that is when you said this is the only film from the US to have a cinema release since the revolution. That, looking at the content of it and what it's the message and what it's sort of trying to say, it's not really surprising, because it's very much in line with I guess like a hardline sort of ethos about what you should and shouldn't do, and the the consequences that might come with making sort of decisions which were probably not in line with the kind of the moral thinking that goes with the Iranian kind of.
It kind of reminds me of the film Taken in that regard. It's like, because that came out in the era of George W. Bush, where going outside of the US is bad. Bad things will happen to you if you go out. And then you got of course that's exactly what happens in the film. But
yes, exactly.
So this is almost like a folksy sort of warning to the citizens of Iran, sort of kind of see what could happen
if you go off and you sort of because they're sort of very much like they've left they're kind of, because it's odd. I mean, it's not that they are particularly regretting having left.
No.
But I mean, obviously they had problems. They were separated for a while and stuff, and it's not. Yeah. At the same time, it's not like they didn't want to leave behind who they were and their culture, but they did go and embrace sort of different things.
Yeah. And
like a different way of life, and it's almost like saying, well, this is what happens when you do that.
Well, exactly. Yeah, there is definitely a part of that, I think. It is. I mean, it is way too long, this film. That's for sure. It really is. As we said, but there are some interesting things. On a technical level, it manages to do a hell of a lot without any special effects whatsoever.
Yeah.
Some well placed soundtrack. Sound effects. Some good.
Yeah.
That's basically it. Yeah, sound effects and some good sort of double takes.
Yeah.
Basically.
Which is bloody good acting, frankly. It's just really good. I mean, his performance is he's just jittery and uncomfortable to to watch, because he's always just on the edge of saying something, of being kind of rude and unpleasant and snapping and lashing out, and she's obviously holding on to this massive secret, which you don't realise until later on. I was going to say there is like supernatural other figures in it, but then it's not. There's no CGI. There's not. It's just it is just acting, isn't it? It's just very well placed kind of creepiness.
I mean, you're talking about the sort of the main actor there. There's a scene towards the end when he's in the morgue, and he is, as you say, he's at the end of his tether. He hasn't been able to sleep. He looks a wreck. And what it reminded me of was, I don't know if you remember this, was a party that you and I went to a long time ago with some other people we worked with. And there was like a house party, and it got to like 5 o'clock in the morning, and we're just waiting for this taxi to arrive. And we're just hanging. He looked how I felt.
Yeah, I remember that. That was like the edge of exhaustion.
It was. Pushed ourselves to the edge, just hanging on. A few more minutes, and the bloody taxi arrives. Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like. What it looked like. But so a couple of really good setups which I really hadn't come across before. Like the whole bit where he goes downstairs with the baby. He's looking for some to feed some hot water so he can make the milk for the baby, and then his wife comes down and says, "Oh no, you go back to bed. It's fine. I'll look after the baby." Because he goes back up, starts falling asleep, and then his wife's like in the room with him, going, "Where's the baby?" It's
God.
Fuck. Oh
man. Because that's to be honest with you, that I was expecting that sooner, because he's down there with the baby in the stroller.
Yeah.
Sort of near the bottom of the stairs, and he's kind of doing his thing. He looks over and sees the
that's right. And he leaves the baby in the stroller, and
he walks off like in his hotel lobby, and he's like, all right, there's no one around, but that would make you even more cautious.
Oh, absolutely.
And he walks off, and he's kind of sort of 10 meters away from this baby.
Out of line of sight.
Yeah. And his wife comes down and goes, "Oh, you can go." And I was sort of thinking, I hope the baby's still there.
Yeah.
when he goes back, because this is gonna play really badly.
See, I think that's what I was afraid of during the whole film. The fact there's a baby there, I'm thinking, shit, something's going to happen to the baby, isn't it? It's going to be taken or disappear or die or something. I was like, oh, for God's sake,
Well, I think.
Yeah, go on.
Go on. I was going to say, I think setups. I think that whole scene was very deliberate, because this is it starts very early playing on. It's just the fact that they are not on the same page. Neither of them, just to make it absolutely clear, this is not about some sort of terrible child abuse type of scenario at all. It's just about the fact that they're struggling between themselves, and that translates into that you're immediately kind of wondering, well, they're not on the same page about looking after this kid, and his kind of like wandering off, and just in that scene, and then her coming down keeps you basically just keeps you nervous about that situation. Well, who's watching the baby kind of thing, and what's going on with it, and the fact the baby's fractious as well. I don't think it needs to have had the experience of being a new parent to just be on edge about that. Really.
No, exactly. Yeah, he hasn't. Yes, he hasn't had the bed. He hasn't had this baby fall off the bed or anything just yet.
Well, no, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's just that. It's just that it creates nerves, because it's not like nothing's normal, comfortable, or routine about the fact that they're caring for this kid. Everything's sort of off kilter. It's probably a really good premise for, I'd say, mainly maybe for people of an older viewer, or viewers who've got families and stuff, because it's not going to
resonate with someone who isn't a parent. I think parents are going to be on the edge of their seat, going, "What the fuck are you doing? Where's the baby? Aren't you keeping an eye on the baby? Where are you?"
yeah, and I mean, it's not the teens aren't going to kind of get that.
No,
And the
that's
team,
right,
to be honest, the teens aren't going to have made it through the dinner party.
probably not.
Necessarily.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say though, I mean, like, I don't know whether you wanted to touch on it later, but you know, technically, and in terms of the way it's shot, this is a movie with high production standards.
It has, yeah. It's very well lit. It's, you know, the sound design, as we sort of hinted at, is very good and it's very well acted. The only thing really holding it back is the pacing. You know,
Yeah.
it plays the same beats a bit too often. I think, you know, the thing with the kid, you know, someone banging on the door, all that sort of stuff. You know, it repeats it, and it's you know, and I suppose that feeds into the, you know, the fatigue of the characters. But in the end, you're just pissing off your audience at the same time. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's a good technique, and like you say, I mean, it didn't, you know, it didn't require a lot of fancy trickery. It just they did really well with what they had. But anything can wear out with overuse. I mean, I thought it was in the car, you know, but if by the point you're sat in a car and there's invisible fingers tapping on the window, I think you may have, you know, you may have pushed it too far if your main character is absolutely a screaming wreck or saying, right, hang on, what the fuck is going on? Like, you know, because it's like footsteps above you in a hotel room. It's like there could always be a rational explanation, no matter how jarring it might be. You know, something tapping on the glass of your car and you can't see it.
Yeah,
all
that's it's time to go.
Yeah.
I think it was what was that film we saw recently? The Haunting of Molly or something? Was that the one, you know, set in the sort of rundown? Yeah, Abigail Haunting, wasn't it? That was it. You know, because she was sort of a bit more sort of switched on and sort of like, there's creepy shit going on here. I'm not coming back in here without somebody with me, sort of thing, you know. Which is
was it under the house and stuff?
Yeah.
With that one, it was the kind of the derelict out, and she goes there, and you don't see the lady she's caring for. You don't see her face for about half an hour.
Yeah.
That one, was it that one?
That's it.
Yeah. But she was a lot more pragmatic than these two.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, hearing a kid's voice in the room with you, that's time to go. Yeah, that's time to go. Well, my wife would be going, we're walking home. If if the car's not working, we're walking.
I don't care.
We'll come back for the car later. Yeah, just put your shoes on and go. Yeah, Jesus. There's an interesting thing that happens at the end of the film. Well, a couple of things that happen at the end of the film. One is that the wife, where's my notes? Nada, she confesses something to her husband as to why she's been haunted, and then, you know, one of the things that's holding them there is the fact that, you know, the electricity's gone out and stuff, and all of a sudden the electricity comes back on. And she's going, well, that was kind of coincidental, wasn't it, darling? Maybe you've got something to tell me. And he's like, no. It's like
that was unbelievable stubbornness, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, exactly. It's just like, well, maybe I'll try and wait this out and see how it plays out before committing. You know,
I think it's going to be a long time.
It's like, what's worse, you know, sort of telling my wife what happened, or enduring this bizarre haunting situation.
Yeah,
you know,
or potentially eternity.
Yeah, it's like, I can wait them out. I mean, it's actually very unclear. It is actually very unclear what his secret is, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go along with that. I've got no clue. I mean, hers
was pretty clear because she actually confessed it, but he stoutly refused to do it. Okay, you know, it's something to do with a woman, or something to do with a woman's death, shall we say? Because and something to do with his job. I think he's a doctor, isn't he, in a hospital? And but it's very unclear what actually happens, you know, that would actually make someone haunt him about it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of a failing there, I think.
Well, no, I mean that was the. I mean that was
the point. Yeah.
I was going to say that was the point. I mean, he really, because I actually, I did a bit of cribbing on this as well, and like it is hinted at earlier on. I mean, the one thing that the homeless fella says, pretty much tells you exactly what what you've just said. That that's why the lights came on, kind of thing. So it's like, this wasn't when she said that thing and everything kind of started looking a bit rosier. You really had no excuse.
Well, exactly. It's like then it's just like pure male stubbornness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is what it basically comes down to. It's like, no, I can ride this out. I can ride this out. If I just stick to my story, everything will be fine. Who hasn't done that?
Yeah. Well,
basically.
I know exactly. But I would be thinking, as bad as this is going to be, I think I'd have to do it. You'd have to do it, otherwise.
Exactly. Especially in light of what happened. In light of the fact that, oh well, she confessed to her bit. Suddenly the lights come back on and the doors unlock and everything. It's like, well, you're halfway home. Just do your bit. It's like, no.
I think it was about it was odd, isn't it? Because it's like a salutary lesson. Very obvious, like a very clear one, and not all. I guess not all horror movies have to have a very clear kind of ending. Sometimes the ambiguity. I mean, do you remember Angel Heart?
Yes. Yeah.
That was. I mean, because that was like that was quite a sort of ambiguous film with a very ambiguous ending. Because it was all heavily metaphorical. Sometimes that is the horror, isn't it? At the end of the day, it doesn't. The beast doesn't get beaten. And in this one, it's like you say they're haunted, but it was them. It's them. They're exactly. Haunting themselves.
Yeah, and you could argue, the exhaustion of and the bit of the alcohol. He was smoking a spliff with his mate before they left. All of that just might have just sort of preyed on them. And the strange surroundings and everything just brought it all to the surface.
Maybe it never happened.
Yeah. The final scene, without spoiling anything, I'll just say I had a quick look on sort of the internet afterwards, because basically it all hangs on someone turning their back on another person, shall we say, and it makes them cry at the end. And I thought, well, what's that about then? So I had a quick look at sort of like Iranian customs, and apparently it is incredibly rude to sit with your back to somebody in Iran, and even if you're like in the front seat of a car and someone's sitting in the back, you got to turn around and apologize to them. So I'm really sorry,
Oh wow, okay, that's a new one.
It's an interesting thing. So there is a real sort of possibly a sort of real sort of cultural significance to that final bit where this guy sort of turns his back. So
well, it's interesting. I mean, because like I said, I did a bit of cribbing on this as I was watching it. I read a few reviews and stuff. And I mean, just one thing that a lot of people said was that it was, and I've got to agree actually, because I've seen obviously quite a lot for this show, and for reviews with you, of films from cultures where I don't have any of that cultural language. I don't have any of that knowledge or background or anything, and it's more than half the enjoyment to learn stuff like this about a movie, because it just teaches you how to enjoy a story in a different way. So cheers for that, actually.
Yeah, cool. All right, I think we'll wrap this one up there. So how would you score this one, Will?
I think, all things considered, this is a strong film, and I can't. I mean, the pacing. I think the pacing is bad, but it's the only bad thing about it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
If you've got time, this is a very well acted, very interesting story. I mean, the production values are high, and while it might kind of feel like it's wearing out its welcome, that is literally the only thing wrong with it, and it's a very interesting, different take on a story. You're not even sure if it's supernatural. It's a very good film, and I'm sort of looking at. I don't know why I'd be if if I would be able to give it a 7. I think it's got to be an 8 because, you know, the only reason I give it a 7 is because it's paced so badly, and I think I'd forgive it because maybe that's just a cultural thing, and that's, you know, what you'd have to accept. Like with some of the Korean films we watched ages ago, their pacing was weird as well by our standards.
The horror films tend to be quite long,
yeah, and that just, you know, so the only reason I'd give it a 7 was because it dragged a bit, and it, you know, you have to be prepared to give it a while. It doesn't seem fair to give it that, so I'd say between a 7 and an 8.
Okay, well, I'm giving it a 7 for exactly the same reasons that you mentioned. It is a good film. It is very well acted. Some proper scares, especially if you're a parent. You know, I think there's some sort of unintentional scares there. You know, if you're a parent, you're gonna be sort of quite anxious for long periods. I think in the middle of the film it does get a bit repetitive and sort of, you know, it possibly could have been quite a bit shorter by about sort of 15, 20 minutes. But other than that, it's a solid little film, definitely. So I think that's a 7 and an 8 for The Night. Our next review then is Shortcut. On the bus ride home, 5 teen school kids are lost in their usual banter and routine until a crashed bus forces their driver to take a detour. A shortcut, if you will. However, they are waylaid by an armed psychopath called Chris who starts to terrorize them. But this isn't the worst thing they're going to come across this evening. Okay. So, Will, this is a very strange production. I think that's fair to say straight up. So this is it's an Italian and German production. It seems to have been shot in Italy, judging by the road signs.
Yeah.
But with a very young English cast, sort of, you know, of varying levels of experience. So some have done more than others. For some of them, this is their first feature film. So right from the off, we've got this sort of weird mix. It's directed by a guy called Alessio Liguri, and it was written by another Italian. I'm just going to get the name. Where did I write down that name? There you go. Danielle Koski is the writer of this. And I don't know about you. I got the impression that this person, I don't want to say it was a male or female, but Danielle, do you get the feeling they were watching lots of John Hughes films when writing this film?
I do. I do. It literally, God, it's the strangest film. Like, I mean, first of all, I thought it was Wales. Just because of the climate and the landscape.
Climate, yeah, it's the hills and the forest and all the rest of it.
Yeah. And then the kids start talking, and I mean, you look at them, and if they didn't talk, you'd be thinking this is an American high school, quite an underpopulated American high school bus.
Where the fuck do they live? This is what you know. The thing about this film is, it gives no context of why these kids are on the bus at all. You know, you're looking at it and going, this can't be a school bus. You know, they've been driving for miles in this forest. You know, these winding country roads.
They don't have luggage. They don't even have, like, do they have their school bags? I don't think they. It's just weird. It's like, I thought, they're coming back from a trip,
like a field trip or something. Yeah.
But there's no staff apart from the bus driver guy, who is American. Like,
yes.
And you know, and the bus is a clearly like an antique. Like, I mean, I'm not, you know, it's clearly like a classic vehicle. I'm looking at thinking, and it doesn't equate to like either sort of British or American school buses. But the kids are blatantly like a sort of a John Hughes ensemble.
It is the Breakfast Club if it was a horror movie. Basically, you know, they even fit into the same sort of categories. You got, for example,
there's a bad boy in the back.
Yeah, you got the bad boy, Nolan. You got Carl, who's the nerd. You got Queenie, also known as IQ. She's the brain, obviously. You got Reggie, who's the jock, and Bess, who's the princess. So you know, all that's missing is the dean, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
It's so. I mean, it really is like a. But they're all really British, and they all sound like they're very quite they're quite kind of. I mean, it's a weird script.
yes. Well, yeah, it basically is. It's very strange.
It's really
You
weird
know,
because how they interact is like it. You know, you can see what it's supposed to be. You can see how they're supposed to. You know, and they are all like, you know, I'm not dissing any of their performances. I'm not even dissing the script. It's just it just sits so strangely because the setup is so incongruous.
it's almost as if they lost a few pages of the script in translating it to English.
Yeah, but then, like
context.
you say, they'll see like Roadstein, like what was it, Zona Militari?
Yeah.
You know, when they hang on.
Well, this is the other thing. If this is a school bus, you know, and they travel this route every day, surely they'd know. You know, surely the bus driver would be aware that there's some weird sort of disused research facility nearby, and really we should be staying away from it. You know.
Yeah. Not basically essentially driving into Area 51.
Exactly.
Like,
in the middle of the night. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume it's winter time because it gets dark pretty quick.
Conveniently,
yeah. So we get this guy Chris who boards the bus. I can't even remember. Again, you know, context. Where did this guy come from? You know, I suppose you could imply, even though the film doesn't actually join the dots, you know, maybe he was responsible for that other crashed bus that you know, the fire crew were
like an ambush setup. Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. But one of the kids seems to know about him and says, "Oh, it's the
it's the guy off the news or something. Oh, his dad's a cop or something, isn't he?" And he says, "Oh, it's that guy that, you know, was on the news. It's who?"
Yeah, and he gets on the bus and he's sort of like, he looks like Frank Gallagher from the UK version of Shameless. Like,
yes, he does.
He's not, you know, he isn't. I mean, as kind of psycho sort of horror movie setup serial killers go, he's really quite weird. I mean, he's just, you know, if it was a US kind of disheveled loner semi hobo with an automatic weapon, looking as though he's about, you know, 2 meals behind, then it would be you'd totally buy it. It'd be like, yes, you know, I get it. But because he kind of gets on and he sort of, you know, and he kind of talks like the Chuckle Brothers. I'm not, you know, not obviously not what he's saying, but his delivery and his kind of his accent, and it's just like, where are we going with this sort of thing? But I mean, he is, and he gets on and he's sort of thinking, I don't, you know, what the hell. But he is actually quite, yeah. I mean, he's a pretty good baddie in the sense that, like, you don't know what the hell he's going to do next, and he doesn't. He's genuinely a psycho. But you're also like, what the hell?
Yeah, you just don't know what's going on because by that point, then the bus breaks down, and then we get the real threat to the film. The real antagonist turns up, which is this sort of weird sort of bat creature. Sort of giant bat creature thing, which we never really sort of clearly see, because everything's sort of
which was a
dark.
Smart move,
possibly.
I think it was well done. Actually. Yeah. No, it was well done. It was like you don't. That was all really, I think, well shot and deliberate. If they'd overplayed their hand with that, this film would have. That would be the point at which a lot of people would have. I think turned off.
Yeah.
Because,
no, you're right. You know, I mean, I think the first rule of like creature features is to, you know, keep them wanting more as far as the actual creature is concerned. You know, you keep your reveal, sort of close to your chest.
They did that quite well. But it's like, I mean, like I said, this would invite, and it's already been said online, but this would invite comparisons with Jeepers Creepers 2.
Yeah, because it's a bus, and because it's something. Yeah, exactly. But it's again, you know, there's this inconsistency as to what it can and can't do. It seems to like to shriek every time. You know, it's probably got some sort of echolocation sort of quality to it because it's always sort of making this sort of shrieky noise. But it seems to sort of just shuffle along, quite easy to run away from. And then at other times, it's incredibly stealthy-like and can sort of like sweep somebody away without, you even noticing.
Without anyone noticing.
Yeah, which was actually quite an effective moment in the film. It's just like when you actually stop to think about it, you go, "Hang on a minute,"
Yeah. But what happened to the shuffling and the
yeah. The it was sort of moving at sort of a snail's pace. It was sort of, next thing you know, it's the guy turns his back for a minute, but when he turns around, the person's completely gone, without a sound, basically. So
what do you think? What do you think this film was trying to say or do?
I think it was trying to be a cross between somewhere between The Breakfast Club and The Goonies. I think it's aimed at sort of like being like a Famous Five kind of thing. I think the threat is there to help the characters bond more than anything else.
I think that's reasonable. I don't think that's unfair at all.
Yeah, it's not your conventional horror film at all. We get this sort of lengthy exposition bit as to a predecessor who was there trying to kill the creature, and which sorry,
is this the Yellow Jacket kid?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So the thing we see in the prologue turned out to have happened like 30 years previously, or even longer, which again sort of makes you wonder why no one's seen this thing before,
or heard of it,
or even heard of it.
It's really an odd film for me because it's lots of disparate elements in one place that don't necessarily kind of individually they're really like legitimate films, and there's each bit that kind of goes in is legitimate film. They're just, I don't think they're all this film.
No,
I don't think they should all be in. I don't think they should all be in one place. I honestly wonder, like script wise, I think that the script may well have just been badly. That like on location edits happen. That revisions happen and stuff like that. But it's like I think that there was more potential for the characters because the kids were certainly giving it. The actors were giving it.
I got no issue with the acting. I mean, especially the girl playing IQ. I thought she was really good, in particular.
But it's
that was her first film.
Well, she didn't do too badly at all. I don't think any of them did. I think they were all, they're all giving it loads. But you sort of think, well, it was just a weird script, and it always seemed not quite suitable. But I couldn't put my finger on why. And it's almost like, is it someone who's writing in English and it's not their first language?
Yeah. The whole thing about the crossroads as well. Yeah, is that I think in the prologue and the epilogue, they're sort of going on about a crossroads. You're going to come to a crossroads and you've got to turn in a different direction or something. It's like, it's very strange.
Yeah, like you start thinking there's bits in there that might have been left out because you know what I mean. Like literally, they might have just thought, well, I don't know, maybe that doesn't work, leave it out. But then they didn't tidy up the rest of the film to kind of remove all the
exactly. Yeah. I think that's possibly right. It might have been that the film came in too long, and the producer said, "No, you got to cut it down."
And then something didn't get tidied up. But I mean, it's just really weird. It's like everything about the film, all of those things should work, but there is no like the thing that I couldn't get over, the thing that I was basically sat there nonplussed about was the setup made no sense. Like you say, where the fuck where's their school, and why? Do you know what I mean? Though, what they have to drive through clearly the remotest part of. It turns out to be Italy.
Yeah.
And
they go. It's because you get like aerial shots and stuff, and it's like, you can see for miles, and there's not a single house or any sort of any remote sense of civilization in any direction, other than this road through the forest sort of thing. It's like, where are you taking these kids?
I kind of I understand that people make films. This probably may well not have been made for a UK market. I don't know. I've not read the distribution stuff on it, but it's like maybe they sort of try to keep it generic, and then it's going to have a wider appeal. We can don't show anywhere. We can distribute it. It's just about the kids, the bus, the facility, and then the minute you start putting in habitations, other people, suddenly you make it too specific and you alienate audiences and stuff like that. I understand that. I get that, but that doesn't mean that you don't put any context about these kids' lives in at all, so that they are literally just suspended in this whole bus scenario like they've not existed before it.
Yeah.
Because it's just weird.
It could be some sort of like weird sort of purgatory that they're perpetually stuck in. Sort of constantly.
That's how strange and kind of like disjointed it is. It could be. It's like that. What was that show? Lost. They're actually dead.
Totally,
it's like there is no context at all for who these kids are or where they're from.
The slight spoilers for the ending. The funny thing is, so the longer the film goes on, the more the creature seems more pathetic and less scary, and to a certain point, by the end of it, you're kind of sympathetic towards it because it is just a creature.
It's just a monster, isn't it? It's not like a. It's not like it is just an animal, an animal. At first, I thought it actually was like a lion or something, when it was in just kind of that guttural sort of. I thought, that's just a big ass wolf or something, or
there's been some interesting, there's been some interesting films of late about horrific horror movies where horrific things happen down to the protagonist's own prejudices. Okay.
Give me an example.
Well, for example, the recent remake of Wrong Turn. Sort of rednecks in the backwards sort of thing, and it gets to a point where sort of the protagonists kill one of these sort of redneck guys, and because they think they've kidnapped one of their friends, and almost like after they've killed them, the friend turns up going, "Oh my God, what the fuck have you done?"
Oh no!
They were helping me. They'll give me directions, and you fucking killed them.
God!
There's all this sort of shit. I mean, but
bloody hell.
Yeah, it's been a couple of things like that recently, and to a certain degree, you could almost see this sort of thing as like, well, these guys have kind of intruded on this creature's home, and.
Yeah, and all this thing. I mean, it's just
all the bright lights and shit. And then the ending, where they sort of like, they basically hound it and set it on fire. And I'm thinking, Jesus, this is like some horrible sort of football hooligans sort of setting someone on fire now. It's it's starting to, and the fact they're sort of cheering and giving each other high fives, going, yeah, it's like, Jesus, if you take this out of context, it's not good. It doesn't look
like. Makes you wonder what kind of school they were at,
Yeah.
Like, was it juvenile hall?
If it then turned out that this creature was actually just a hobo, living there or something, could have been really, really horrible. But no, it's a creature, so that's fine. But then we get this voiceover again, as I say, and it is very much sort of like, we learned a lot about ourselves on this trip, sort of thing. It's like, well, all that's missing is "Don't You Forget About Me" by the Simple Minds to start kicking in, and someone to punch the air as they walk across the football field. It really is. It's going for that sort of, Breakfast Club sort of ending. It's weird.
Have they learned anything? Had we learned anything?
Something about Crossroads, I think. Oh no, Courage. That was it. There was because the bus driver gave them this riddle.
The riddle. Yeah. Courage.
Yeah, they had it inside them all the time. It's the Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
Man, it was just too confusing.
It is a bit of a mess, I have to say. And on that note, Will, how are we going to score Shortcut?
I can't be as generous. with this one, and I feel the thing is, you feel bad because, like, you know, a lot of energy went in from the cast, and actually a lot of, you know, some pretty good technical setups for some, you know, for some quite well achieved action type sequences went in. There's a good creature that was obviously not done with a great deal of money, but was done well.
And the setting was pretty good. I mean, you know, the tunnels and the you know, that contraption with all the lights on it and everything. You know, it was quite interesting. It was
original. There was moments of real originality in it, but it was just too flipping weird and confused for me. I need to know who people are before I can sort of get behind the idea of them being stuck on a bus, or even what country they're in. I mean, that helps me enjoy. Hello, are you there again?
Yeah, sorry, I'm still here.
Oh, good. I thought I lost you again.
No.
All right. I mean, okay. All kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Pudging aside, all joking aside, it's just, you know, it. I think it's going to have to be, and I feel harsh saying this, it's going to have to be a 6.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a 6. I think there is entertainment value here, but not what the filmmakers were intending. I think this is something to slap on and have a bit of a giggle at, and sort of, you know,
that seems harsh and insulting. It seems harsh and insulting, but it's just everything's good. It's just in the wrong place.
Yeah, and as far as the cast is concerned, I mean, look, you know, sort of people like Angelina Jolie, Charlize Theron, you know, Jennifer Aniston. They all started in low budget horror movies before they got, you know, they built their career. So this is as good a start point as any for the cast. You know,
and the crew, quite frankly,
and the crew as well. So, yeah, there's a lot to admire here, but there's also a lot that's going to make you scratch your head and just go, what?
It was like watching several. It was very good technical exercises all at once. That's what it was like watching. Watching some very good technical exercises pieced together. Do you know what?
Yeah.
Do you reckon that this could be a 7 or an 8 if it was re-edited?
Yeah, with a few extra scenes to actually establish a bit of context to their bus journey, and you know, I think yeah, you're probably right. Do you know one thing I did admire actually when we start getting this flashback bit, because at the beginning we see this kid in the yellow coat, you know, running through the forest, and then we find out it's this guy, and I was thinking to myself, going, the creature better not follow him because it's fucking daylight, and they've spent all this time establishing that it hates daylight and, you know, any sort of bright light, and to their credit, they didn't. Yeah, I thought, and it sounds like a really weird, you know, sort of damning with faint praise kind of thing, but at least they allowed themselves that dignity of not doing, you know, setting themselves up to fail, sort of thing.
Well, it is a vampire movie at the end of the day, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, that's essentially what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. See, that was the other thing, is, you know, the fact that at least one of the characters gets bitten, and there doesn't seem to be any real consequence of it in the film. It's just like,
that'll be follow-up. That'll be part 2.
That'll be part 2. See, again, that's what they missed at in the epilogue. You know, they could have sort of gone back and shown that person sort of changing in some way, or, you know, being infested, contagious, who knows. But anyway, yeah. So, it's rare, you know, considering what we were saying about the previous review, The Night, in that it was too long and it could do with some cutting down. You know, it is quite rare where we're sort of saying, no, you actually need to put a few extra scenes in. It is quite rare that we actually have to say that.
Very. But this film needs that. This film needs some more explanation, and it needs tightening up in some of the other edits.
I think that's a first, actually. Yeah. Okay, so that's 2 6s for Shortcut. Check it out. Our short shot this week is Escape from North Korea. In the far-flung future of
1985,
North Korea has kidnapped the US president's daughter and 10-time Oscar-winning actress Tracy Lawson. Now it is up to the only surviving member of the Ninja Task Force to go on a rescue mission and escape from North Korea. I must admit, knowing nothing about this film at all, wondering what on earth I was going to get. And I thought I was going to get some sort of intense drama about somebody's actual escape from North Korea. You know, but no, this is much more in the line of Kung Fury. No,
Kung Fury, yeah.
Kung Fury, yes, it was.
Yeah.
And I was
Commando Ninja.
Yeah, and there was another one as well, wasn't there?
That one with the frying pan.
Yeah, what was that?
Cyborg Deadly Machine.
Cyborg
That was it.
Machine.
That's
So
the one.
it definitely fits in with that sort of genre. You know, a lot of CGI backdrops and things to sort of convey what's going on. This one as well, you know, it's got the aesthetic that it's sort of quite knackered sort of VHS tape. You know, you get sort of the lines sort of coming across every now and again. But this is, again, you know, for this genre, it's a lot of fun. There's not much to complain about here, I don't think. Rich, over to you.
Yeah,
he says.
no, I love it. I'm actually going to throw it over to Steve first.
All right.
Yeah, it's not what it says in the tin because it says nothing at all about. It's just absolutely batshit insane. To be fair, I mean, it's like you said, like Cyborg, Deadly Machine, stuff like that. It's just fun. The acting's terrible. The effects aren't great, but that's the nostalgia factor for it, I think. And it was just absolutely hilarious. And the ending, where you get the extra scene, the credits as well. I was absolutely pissing myself laughing at that. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, it's I love all these, you know, pastiche films that are being made for you know, like Kung Fury and that. Or I think did all this come about because of you know, Grindhouse and Machete and all that, or were there examples of this before that? I can't remember.
I can't tell you, but
there seem.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole aesthetic, you know, the synth wave thing and everything. It's all you know. Quixotic did it recently with Highway Violence.
That's correct.
It's kind of adding in all these references and stuff. You know, we got the DeLorean from Back to the Future, which is called the DeCorian in this movie,
Yeah.
and aliens, lots of references to aliens and different things, and obviously the Escape from New York thing, which is kind of the main bit, and the ninjas and stuff. I think it's.
I mean,
yeah.
Sorry, Rich.
Go on.
Well, it's just the thing, you know. He's kidnapped to put her in movies, you know. But it has actually happened. I think someone from North Korea was kidnapped into South Korea and forced to make movies.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
you know, so it does kind of.
It is a thing that has actually happened in real life. Yeah. I mean, lots of people were kidnapped in Korea, and Kim Jong-il was a massive movie fan, and he did kidnap, I think, probably actors or people to act in his films as well. But most notable, well, yes, there was an actress from South Korea who kidnapped, and he kidnapped her husband as well, who was a film director. And there's a book and a documentary film, Lovers and the Despot, which is well worth seeing. Which is all about, you know, that crazy story of because they were separated and then they got kidnapped and then they kind of became a couple again in, you know, and they kind of had to unite together to escape themselves. So there is a real thing here, but this movie is sort of taking that nugget of an idea and just
he's just throwing it,
just doing something completely different. But it's much more typical rescue the president's daughter story, and I love how they've taken the Ryugyong, I can't say it, the hotel in Pyongyang that looks like a spaceship.
Yeah, and that's an actual spaceship.
Made it an actual spaceship. So it takes off and stuff. To an extent, the plot. If this is a half-hour movie, and the first bit is kind of like the raid, where he has to fight through different levels, but combined with stuff like Resident Evil, you know,
Death.
Yeah. When Kim Jong-il actually turns up, he's the weak link. I think his performance is rubbish. compared to everyone else in the movie. It just doesn't work. It doesn't gel. Because the soundtrack's really good. Keith Eng, who is the star, he plays Kang, who's always given these one-liners after every stuff in typical fashion. He's the writer, director, producer, cinematographer, editor, and visual effects artist on the movie. So this is kind of, he's all in on this, and I think he did a great job. I mean, he's not really got that I've seen. He's not really got any other credits, so he's kind of coming from nowhere with this. This came out last year. It completely passed me by at the time, and I think I was blown away when I discovered it, and the whole thing, the Ultraman stuff that happens at the end with Liberty Protocol, with the Statue of Liberty and stuff. It's all great. Yeah, it's highly entertaining, and I hope Kung Fury has done really well, become a big cult thing, and they're trying to get a feature film version of that finished. I mean, probably delayed due to COVID and everything, but I'd love to see more of this. Maybe do another one of these or something like it from this guy, or do something completely different. Clearly a very talented filmmaker. Love pretty much everything about it.
One interesting thing about it as well is the sort of the face mask that he wears, which sort of covers the lower part of his mouth. It's almost like a sort of sort of cyber version of what we're all wearing now, basically because of COVID. But it actually, as far as I know, it originates in a film called Kashern.
Yeah, that's exactly the one I was thinking of.
Have you seen it?
I think I did. I mean, it was like mid-2000s, wasn't it?
It's a dreadful film. I mean, the special effects and everything are superb, but the story is so nihilistic and depressing. It's fucking awful.
I can't remember it.
It's something you end up hating while you're watching it. You're just waiting for something good to happen with sort of some special effects and shit. But if
I did see it, it left no impression because I remember nothing
about it. I used to have a copy of it. I think I sold it. But, no.
But that poster is quite memorable. That sort of iconic image of him wearing the mask, and that's quite possibly
I think that's where it originates from. But, loads of other great touchstones in this, as you mentioned. So it's a lot of fun.
Oh, I like the line, what have they done to you? You're using the metric system.
Yeah, and the bit at the end when he sort of goes, you got some good moves, maybe you can show me some in my dojo. And he's like, yeah, buy me dinner first. Whoa boy. We don't score the short shots, but we will put a link to this one into the footnotes, so please check it out. That is Escape from North Korea. So for this segment, we're joined by Dave Wayne and Maddie Budrevich from the Schlock Pit. Evening, guys. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hi.
Awesome. So Dave, obviously, contributor to the show in its early days before branching out and getting involved with lots of other projects. You and Matty been contributing to some of the output from 88 Films with their sort of booklets and recording interviews for various discs as well. I think you've also done some commentaries, haven't you?
Just eight, I think. Yeah.
Oh, just eight. Get your fingers out, boys. Come on.
I know.
They made an excellent documentary called Transfixed by Light, which is all very well worth seeing on the Replicant disc.
Yeah, that was good fun. We had a good time doing that.
Awesome. And tonight, I believe you've chosen our DTV throwback for this week, which is Wolves of Wall Street.
Yes, well, we know that everybody on this show is such hardcore David Dakota fans. I know that because I can see us all sat here in our tighty whities, which is slightly off-putting after I've just eaten. But yeah, I know everyone's a huge David Dakota fan, so it was a tough choice. We sort of mulled it over for a couple of minutes,
15 seconds.
10, 15 seconds. And we thought, well, which Dakota film could we do? We were hoping to do like maybe one of the really uncomfortable watching for you guys, Voodoo Academy 1 and 2 or something like that. But sadly, they've been taken off
Prime for the moment.
Oh,
So thankfully you can thank Jeff Bezos for saving your blemishes for this episode. So instead we've selected Wolves of Wall Street, which I think is it's a good entry point, isn't it?
It's an interesting name. I mean, it was made in 2002, so long before Scorsese and DiCaprio did Wolf of Wall Street. So was it? This must have been a well-known term for Was it? Was there a book originally?
There was a film from 1929. This pre-code drama starring George Bancroft, and that was the first documented use of The Wolf of Wall Street as a title. And then obviously somewhere down the line, Jordan Belfort became the Wolf of Wall Street. That was apparently the nickname bestowed to him for his practices, operating his boiler room in Wall Street. But obviously the funny thing about it is that Belfort actually bankrolled 2 David Dakota films back in the 90s. So it's all connected. It's all connected somehow. And I can... a couple of years ago, I had the pleasure of interviewing Dakota, and I asked him about the title. It was just not long after Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street came out. And, he was just joking around saying that, Belfort's clearly pinched my title because we knew each other back in the day and stuff.
So just a quick synopsis of Wolves of Wall Street. So we've got this main character called Jeff. He lands his dream job as a stockbroker at the prestigious Wolf Brothers on Wall Street, and he's keen to learn the ropes, but finds the world of stockbroking is a vicious world of predators and prey, literally in this case, because his new compadres are a family of werewolves. So this is a very unique werewolf film in that you get 0 transformations whatsoever at all. I mean, there's less transformations of this in the film Wolf.
But you do get a lot of wolf metaphors. Everyone's continually referred to as part of the pack. There's lots of talk about unleashing your inner beast and things like that. So that's enough werewolf action for me. I can take that. I can take the verbal sort of werewolf jousting over the effects.
Oh, certainly. I must admit, I hardly missed it because the script itself is actually not too bad. And it does sort of play like a DTV version of Wall Street. The Charlie Sheen. I nearly said Charlie Chaplin. The Charlie Sheen and Michael Douglas film. Way back when. There's elements of that in here for sure. And Eric Roberts is having a wonderful time playing the sort of the big bad in this one.
Big Bad Wolf.
Indeed, he is.
Yeah, it's like a Boiler Room had come out a couple of years earlier, so I'm guessing that was probably a key influence on it. They've got those kind of.
It had been American Psycho. I think that's probably the big one. If you look at all the stuff that Dakota made within that period, you've got Speed Demon, which he pitched as his answer to the Fast and the Furious. You've got Ancient Evil, his Mummy film, which he pitched the day that the Mummy Returns was being released in US theaters and stuff like that. I think one of the Brotherhood sequels he said was sort of based around the idea of doing a Lord of the Rings kind of thing and stuff like that. So I think that obviously with American Psycho being at the time that was still renting like crazy. So I imagine that was an impetus in the genesis of the script and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He is a very prolific director.
That's an understatement.
That is an understatement.
He's made about 14 films called The Wrong something.
You need, I think you'd need a toilet roll to sort of actually write down every single film on his resume. It's absolutely crazy, and some of them I've actually heard of. Oh
yeah, I mean, he's very well established, isn't he? I mean, back in the 80s and 90s, he was making the high end, DTV and B movie and even theatrical releases. I believe you guys will have to set me straight if I'm wrong on any of that. But it was like the Puppet Master stuff. It was Paramount backed at the time. He was doing quite a lot of high profile stuff, and it's more recently he's kind of concentrated on much smaller, more more independent kind of operations. Is that fair to say?
He's always been independent. Always. He's a self-described journeyman, and the Wolves of Wall Street came about in the time that he'd set up his own company called Rapid Heart Pictures, which I believe he still operates in terms of like having it as like that's his brand.
Yeah, stuff. I was surprised this one wasn't a Rapid Heart. I thought it was.
Well, it's a lot of the stuff that he did. He set up Rapid Heart in late '99. And that's the sort of stuff where up until he entered the Lifetime fold with all like the wrong movies, you know, like the wrong stepmother, the wrong roommate, all that kind of stuff. Up until roundabout then, like that's his branding. That's how he markets his movies, and that's what most Dakota pictures fall into. And at the time of Wolves of Wall Street, he was working a lot with a company called Regent, and they were financing several Rapid Heart flicks. You know, they financed the Brotherhood and the Brotherhood sequels. But then at the same time, the formula that he was doing with his Rapid Heart films, because, you know, if when you talk about Dakota, especially his horror films, they're a very distinctive style, aren't they? You know, you think of the tighty-whitey homoerotic horror. And that was the Rapid Heart formula. So everything within that period, anything genre-y that he made, any sort of horror movie, sci-fi film, thriller, whatever, whether it was for Rapid Heart, his own outfit, or another company as a gun for hire, be it like Regent or even Full Moon when he went back there for a bit, it was still that style. It was still the Rapid Heart style of film. But then, of course, you know, if you go further back than that, the Rapid Heart style has always been his style ever since he entered "quote unquote" legitimate filmmaking. You know, they're all. One of my ongoing fascinations is with him as a filmmaker, because I truly believe he's just an incredible auteur. Like every film links into the next one, or every film has a companion piece. And stuff like all his entire. It's impossible really to look at one Dakota film without looking at least another 3 or 4 that surround it, because they're all. It's an ongoing tapestry rather than a separate project each time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I was particularly interested in was the fact that at the end of the movie, it doesn't say directed by David Dakota. He's got it on the same screen as the editor. Which you never see. So I was wondering if you knew why that was in particular, that he was sharing that space with his editor in this particular instance.
Not a clue, in all honesty. With that, it does strike me as odd as well. And like upon revisiting it, I'd never realised that. Yeah, oh my God, yeah, he's sharing it with his editor here. It is a very unusual credit. I can only imagine that like a lot of the film was probably brought together through certain editorial choices. And if like, you know, if you look at it in terms like of the style and stuff like that, it is a very showy film. It does rely a lot on like the cutting and stuff to move things forward at times.
Okay, Steve, let's get a few of your thoughts about Wolves of Wall Street.
Yeah, it's not my kind of thing, I'll be honest with you. Thought some of the editing was a bit on the nose, especially at the beginning. Where it's cutting from, is it the guy running out of the building and then to the moon? It's like bang, bang, it's in the beat with the music. And
you could do a drinking game with the moon shots in this film.
Yeah, I mean, they nearly give me an epileptic fit at that point at the beginning. I was disappointed that there is literally no transformation or looking like a werewolf scene in it, to be honest. I know Mike said he wasn't too bothered by that, but it needed it to me. It was basically just a couple of veins in his head that turned green, and he got his teeth grew a bit. To me, like you say, it was like a bit like Wolf, but I just think it did need a bit more than that.
Well, that's the thing. The thing about the movie is it feels like a vampire movie. That
in a way,
is you know, because of the nature of the title and everything, they have to use the werewolf references. So it feels to me, it feels much more like a vampire movie, especially with like the gothic styles and everything. You know, like when they're doing their boiler room stuff and they've got candles lit everywhere, which the guy who's joined them doesn't seem to think's weird at all.
No, not at all. It's normal thinking in New York, obviously. Yeah, I mean, that aesthetic I did kind of like, but it was quite strange. But I mean, Eric Roberts is just chewing the scenery, and I thought he was the best.
He's great. Yeah, he's great.
Absolutely brilliant.
When he, especially compared to some of his performances now, I think he's really giving a lot more in this film than we see it. You know, he's not just turning up. He's in several scenes. He's quite involved in the action. He's playing a key role.
I mean, when he pisses on his leg, that was brilliant. Just
marking his territory.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's strange you're saying about the vampire thing, because it began life as a potential sequel to the Brotherhood. It began life first as the Brotherhood 3.
Okay.
And when the Brotherhood 3 got made, it got bumped to be the Brotherhood 4, but then obviously they elected just to mount it as a standalone project. It's even stranger still, because what I said earlier about, like, if you look at one Dakota flick, you have to look at another, like, 3 or 4 that connect with it and stuff. But Wolves of Wall Street, it's like a veiled remake of a film he made in the 90s for Full Moon's erotic subdivision, Torchlight, and it's called Blonde Heaven. And
right.
It's literally, it's a very, very similar film in that, whereas in Wolves of Wall Street you've got this, this bumpkin who comes to New York to chase his dream of becoming a stockbroker. In Blonde Heaven you've got this small town bumpkin girl who moves to Los Angeles to chase her dream of becoming a model / actress.
Right. Okay.
Instead of falling in with like a clan of werewolves, she falls in with a clan of vampires.
So it's the old Corman trick.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, like, you know at the start where you see the guy in Wolves of Wall Street where he's running, you see the shadow projected up against the side of one of the NYC buildings or whatever.
Yes,
that same shot is used in a vampire attack in Blonde Heaven. Exactly the same shot, and there's so many, even all the things with like the Gothic or the Baroque set dressing and stuff like that. All that overlaps with Blonde Heaven too.
So that's fascinating. Right. I've never actually seen that one. That's one of his Ellen Cabot movies, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Because he also made Beach Babes from Beyond under that name, which I didn't realise it was him for obviously until many years later. That it was. It might have been listening to you guys actually that made me discover that. Yeah, I mean, he's made films under various pseudonyms over the years because he's just been so prolific, like Fred Olen Ray and Jim Wynorski.
It's really, it's strange, but like obviously what you said there, like Beach Babes from Beyond and that, like you wouldn't think that an openly gay filmmaker would be making like TNA movies, because that's what they were. But Beach Babes from Beyond, Test Tube Teens from the year 2000, that whole mid-90s bracket, that whole mid-90s bracket of sci-fi comedy erotica that he made. But then when you actually scratch the surface, even beneath the cavalcade of tits and asses and beautiful women, there is an incredible amount of homoeroticism. When you look at like the love scenes in it, that he's angling more he's angling just as much on the six packs of the guys as he is on like the female form and stuff. It's fascinating going back, looking at the erotica after watching his Rapid Heart era, like just seeing how it all weaves in and joins together and stuff.
Then the homoerotica was pretty light on the, thin on the ground for this one, wasn't it? Compared to stuff that was done at the time. I mean, personally, I think you could almost scratch beneath the surface of Wolves of Wall Street and kind of think, well, is it an allegory for homosexuality? You kind of got this guy going to the big city. He gets this girlfriend who's really nice. But then, the girlfriend finds out what he's doing. And you got these guys who are kind of, bringing him towards their club, quotes like, isn't this what you've long wanted for your entire life? And, don't fight the urge, Jeff. That sort of thing. Maybe it's just me.
No, I totally agree. The scene on the roof, the scene on the roof in particular, as you say, when they're all drinking and there's like, this is what you wanted, this is what you wanted. He's about a second away from getting fucked, basically, on there. I really thought that's where it was going.
That's in the X-rated cut, funnily enough.
Now, when I first saw this back in, I think when Third Millennium put it out in like 2002, it was that subtext that really caught my eye is that you get something here that you don't see in a lot of movies. I know in horror, it's subtext is quite a key thing, but a lot of the horror that you see doesn't really. And this one was, it was quite eye-catching. I thought it was quite interesting, the themes that it was introducing and playing with, not just the homoerotic stuff, which isn't as present as when I was thinking of going back and watching it. The film I had in mind in terms of it being more homoerotic was Ring of Darkness, which was a couple of years later. This one, there's not so much going on, but I also think there's a whole thing about toxic masculinity and domestic violence going on as well, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot now, especially with the conversation that's going on at the minute in society about things like that. There is a remarkable degree of prescience to Wolves of Wall Street, I think, in terms of how it represents entitled men thinking they can, get away with and do whatever the hell they want. I think that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the guy's his first victim, if I recall correctly, is possibly a male prostitute, because he's a guy in a like leather sort of vinyl vest approaching him at night, who he attacks, and I think that's that's very particular in what he's trying to convey there. In terms of
you mentioned third millennium there, Rich, and that's kind of one of the things we wanted to draw upon in this segment as well, because you've got to hand it to them. A little tiny UK distributor like that, and without them, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to watch stuff back in the day, like Wolves of Wall Street, like Young Demons, Young Warlocks, Final Scream, Legend of Mummy 2. I mean, the stuff that they brought over that otherwise, 20, well, maybe not that long, 18 years ago, we never would have had the chance to see. I mean, I remember thinking, back in 2002, back in 2003, you'd watch these films, and I never would have expected that 18 years later, I'd still be obsessing over them. Some of the stuff they released, like Shredder, that great horror film, Phantom Below, the Brian Trenchard Smith film, or Deep Freeze with, John Buechler directed that. And then you got the collections of certain directors and certain film companies that they released as well, like UFO, Philip J. Roth's organization. They released stuff like Hypersonic, Epoch, New Alcatraz, and also, say, Lloyd Semandl, for example. They released a lot of his films as well.
Deadly Engagement and all that.
Yeah. So it's amazing when you look at their catalogue now, and we're so far ahead of that era, and you never would have thought that at the time, so many people regarded it as absolute, rubbish. But now it's amazing how often we draw upon those films and how much they've influenced, certainly me and Matty, in the stuff that we seek out to watch these days.
And one of my favourites films is Shadow Fury, which they put out, which is like a lot of the films that were released then, quite hard to get hold of now, and most of them haven't been re-released or
and they won't be.
In some cases, made available even digitally.
Yeah, they're gone. So we need to really, whenever you're cruising a charity shop or any kind of boots or anything like that, just hoard those films, because once they're gone, they will be gone forever.
There will be shitloads of them out in the wild. I'm sure of it, because they were everywhere.
But you would have thought
just like one or two copies. There was multiple copies in Globals, Blockbusters, all, and that's why.
Yes, but you say that. But what's the hardest VHS to find in 2021? If you go onto the VHS forums with those knuckle-dragging, weird, beardy men that sort of lurk in their parents' basement, the hot tape that all those guys are looking for is Lord of the Rings, the third one, whatever it was, rental copy on VHS. It's the hottest tape to find at the moment, completely scarce. And there were 100 copies of that in every Blockbuster up and down the land. But now, 2021, that is the most valuable tape on the market today. The rental copy of the third Lord of the Rings film.
Wow, that's crazy, and for such a mainstream film to be in one, so hard to get, but two, in such demand is quite interesting.
On VHS, I mean, I switched over to
the reason it's so rare is that it was caught in the changeover from VHS to DVD. That's why it's sort of in the I think it was like one of the last ones made. I know that I think in America it was A History of Violence was the last
it was,
commercially produced VHS tape. And over here, Lord of the Rings film probably stands as one of the last ones. So obviously, I imagine a lot of them went to landfill. But with these third millennium thing, like the amount of DVDs there must be something somewhere for them. There must be, you can get, they were everywhere. And that's why this is the era for me where I love 90s DTV. Do not get me wrong. I think, like the era of Albert Pune, the era of John Ayres, I think that is incredible. But what really got me into direct-to-video is the Wolves of Wall Street era, that whole third millennium, when you could go into places like Music Zone and buy buy Shredder on DVD for $5. That's what excites me, just thinking back to those times, like just staring at all the stuff like Wolves of Wall Street, all the rows of third millennium titles in Globals and Blockbusters the UK over. That's the halcyon days for me. The early, the sort of, just as DVD was really taking off.
Sorry, everyone paused to wait while that tumbleweed just sort of went across the road there.
I think we were all just so enthralled, we didn't know how we could follow it. No, I had I've got one called the one that comes to mind that's in my collection is RPM, which is a film with David Arquette and Famke Janssen, which is quite it's like a street race, not like a street racing movie, but like the car racing is kind of like the theme in it. But it's an odd little film, but you don't really see it about much now. And I keep thinking of, I must rewatch that. So it's one of those ones that where
if you rewind back to 2002, 2003 time, you could have gone in Global, and no matter which direction you looked, it would have been there.
Yeah,
it's meant.
I was in Blockbuster. They back in those days, Blockbuster was half the shelves were. If it wasn't one of the big mainstream ones, it was the stuff at the bottom. It was Third Millennium, or it was Metro. Film 2000 is the one I'm thinking of specifically. But Third Millennium. So much great stuff. And I've seen
Misty Monday as well. That's a quick word for Misty Monday and the film to John Backus, Lord of the G-Strings and Erotic Witch Project.
Playmate of the
Apes, Erotic Witch Projects.
I mean, they are worth a fortune. Yeah, they are worth a fortune. I had them all on VHS. I gave them all to some really horny guy that wanted to, that obviously didn't get out much and didn't see many girls.
Not me, by the way.
That's what you said.
The other thing was that they released 18 rated edits of porn films. Like Blue Angel and stuff like that, which was it's unusual to think that back in Blockbuster, back in the day, Blockbuster was stocking films of that type, and because they didn't draw a line between what was a low budget film and a film intended for other audiences.
The reason, though, that to sort of bring it all back to Dakota territory, one of the reasons why his stuff was so ubiquitous is because he could deliver on a certain quality. That's why he was continually getting work and stuff. And I think that, if you look at his stuff, it is, if you compare this to, Wolves of Wall Street, say, you compare that to Drek, like Camp Blood, another thing that was sort of haunting the shelves of Blockbuster at the same period. Wolves of Wall Street, at least it looks and feels like a real movie. And
yeah, I agree with that.
One of the great things about Dakota, though, is that he can make beautifully shot and technically astounding movies. For a price, and then that's what sells. That's why he was continually getting work and stuff, because the movies, they looked and felt much bigger than they were, and he was creating demand for himself purely because of how good he was at what he was doing.
And he makes them in widescreen as well. That's the one that, going back and watching this one, because when it first came out, it was pan and scan, so it was nice to see it in widescreen.
But if you ever want to spend an hour with Dakota, there's a great interview that was done around about 2009. With a guy called Stephen Jarkow, who was half of the Regent Entertainment guys. The other guy was a fellow called Paul Collishman, who influenced so many filmmakers. He's great guy. He founded a company called IRS Media back in '89 with what's the guy? Copeland, Miles Copeland. Then he started Region about '95. They really made a shitload of money with Gods and Monsters, of course, with Ian McKellen, which helped them invest in various projects. But anyway, two guys. You've got Paul Collishman on one side, you got Steve Jarkow on the other side. Dakota sits down for an interview with Jarkow in about 2009. And it's amazing. It really gives you a great insight into who he is. And I don't know how anyone could watch that for an hour and 6 minutes and come out of it and not admire him. There's a great quote in there in the way he describes the films that he makes. He says it's done in a way that it's smart, it's sexy, it's slick, big looking, gorgeously mounted, stunning cast, no nudity, no gore, no four-letter words, and it's a formula that Blockbuster absolutely loved, and they bought it up, and they did well. They did well.
I think that's what one of my continued frustrations is any sort of. I mean, I freely admit that I'm a David Dakota zealot, and I will it's beyond being an apologist, It's but what frustrates me is that you get people who the criticism now when people do talk about his stuff, rather than acknowledging the fact that he is a pioneering gay filmmaker. They just, he's not gay enough. His films weren't gay enough. It's like, what you have to remember that these were being made under the pretense of horror movies for girls. Okay, that's how he could get away with the homoerotica, And you have to remember as well that they were going to rentals, they were going to Blockbusters in Middle America. And there is no way in hell, if you started waving the penises around, there is no way in hell a Middle American Blockbuster would have picked any of these things up.
Well, the only film that I think even comes close to being an out film from that period was Hellbent. And I can't think of anything else around that time that, allowed their characters to be openly gay.
No.
It frustrates me because when people say that Dakota's films of this time weren't gay enough, it's like, come on, there's characters in Prison of the Dead, for example, the chief, the antagonist who becomes the protagonist, he sets out to be the villain of the piece, and then in this masterful stroke of storytelling, he's the one you end up rooting for. In Prison of the Dead, the guy, he's a fucking nymphomaniac bisexual rich kid. And it's like, what do you mean his films weren't gay enough? What do you mean? That's insane. That's an insane criticism to level at him. Again, if you fast forward just a couple of years after Wolves of Wall Street to 2006 time, maybe Killer Bash. That's about a kid who's bullied, a young man who's bullied in his school, who's resurrected as a beautiful female to seduce her male tormentors. How can you say that's not gay enough? How can you watch something like Voodoo Academy and say that's not gay enough? How can you watch something like The Brotherhood or Wolves of Wall Street and say that's not gay enough? Just because it's not out and out explicit. And again, I think people need to remember that this was 20 years ago, where things like this, where yes, we were much more modern than we were in the 80s, say, 20 years ago. We were much more liberal in our views and stuff. But at the same time, there was much more homophobia then than there is today. And today there's still a hell of a lot of it about.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting on Twitter. I've seen a lot of conversations recently about where are the gay horror films and things like this. Where are the gay auteurs? And the film that everyone still uses as a touchstone is Nightmare on Elm Street 2. So clearly they haven't discovered Dakota's work. And
it's nuts. It's nuts, and it's fabulous as well. I think that there is a large part of it. Another thing that really bothers me is that, the quote I always go back to is that Dakota himself always says that if you work too much in the film industry, you are considered a hack. And I think that a lot of people, I imagine, say they'd watch something like Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bowl-orama or Nightmare Sisters or whatever, and they look up his filmography. You look and you're presented with 150 plus titles. I think a lot of people would be like, well, where the fuck do I go from here? It is quite an intimidating spread of credits to look at. And I think that does put a lot of people off, the fact that he is so prolific. But my argument to that is the only reason he's prolific, the only reason he continues to get work is that he is good at what he does and he fills a gap.
And he makes money. He's making money for somebody, and they keep hiring him. So yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask whether or not you felt he was like a director for hire, but I noticed in his filmography that he's probably written the scripts for about half the films he's worked on,
or conceived the stories for them and stuff like that. He occupies this wonderful. This is something me and Dave are obsessed with. This idea of like these directors who occupy the middle ground between art and commerce. I find that fascinating. That like they make movies that are purely dictated to by the demands of the market, and they're completely unashamed with that. In that bracket, you've got David Dakota, you've got Jim Wynorski, Fred Olen Ray, John Ayres, Albert Pune, etc. But at the same time, when you actually look at each of their films, they are pulled from an overarching ideas pool. They are, like I said earlier, they link and stuff like that. There's so many overarching themes and concepts to all of their movies and stuff. And they can, they themselves can say that, I'm just a gun for hire. I'm just a gun for hire. They can say that all they want, but they are artists, and they just happen to be making their art to fit the demands of what the audience want. And I think that's a remarkable skill to have, that you're able to basically make your own thing while entertaining the masses, or at least the demographic that your project's being mounted for.
Yeah, I mean the sort of the mainstream version of this, I think, is someone like Stephen Hopkins or Peter Hyams. The sort of very professional directors who seem to be picked for very sort of eclectic sort of genre work. It's not sort of groundbreaking, but it's very professionally done each time.
Someone like Joel Schumacher, I mean, it's probably your other one.
Sure.
I'd have thought.
I know Dakota's. He's a big fan of Schumacher, and I think that I'm sure you guys picked up on a lot of nods to the Lost Boys in Wolves of Wall Street and stuff. There's that whole scene on the rooftop is basically, all they need to do is start dangling off the bridge. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think like Dakota, he's like a cross between Tony Scott and Jess Franco. That's where I think
that's a good one.
I'd place him. The sort of style, the beautiful anamorphic photography, digging right in with close-ups and just trying to find the moment. And then on the flip side, all these wild and kind of fruity and esoteric dabbles in eroticism and vampirism and gothic stuff, things like that. I think that's Tony Scott meets Jess Franco is that's how I'd pitch him to someone who's wanting to explore his work more.
Yeah, and I'd also say if you someone who liked Bit, for example, recently, or someone who likes the Lost Boys, I think it's a different take on the same kind of themes, but it fits in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's worth it. I think it's I don't think it's the best film in the world, but it's an interesting film, and it's far more than you think it might be, as you say, because it's very well photographed, some great performances. We've got Eliza Donovan from Clueless in there as well as the girlfriend, who's kind of caught in the middle of it all, and that's where the sort of domestic violence sort of theme comes in. Yeah, I think it is a very interesting film. I say it was nice to come back to see it after I think I probably haven't seen it for 15 years or something, and to find that nothing much has changed. I still like the movie, but actually I got even more out of it this time.
Well, I'd never seen it before, and I was quite surprised by it. Despite the lack of any sort of werewolf stuff for a werewolf film, I thought it was actually pretty decent. I actually did like the script, and I liked Eric Roberts' performance in it. I thought he was great. I actually sort of thought the protagonist Jeff, he kind of comes off as a bad guy at the end. There's a sort of confrontation with sort of the main sort of head of the sort of werewolf family, and he's like, "But I trusted you. I trusted you. I thought you wanted this, and you're betraying us. He genuinely seems hurt by what he's done. I thought it was pretty cool.
Would you watch if you were completely unfamiliar with David Dakota, would you watch another film off the back of Wolves of Wall Street?
I probably would. Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, because what me and Dave were saying before when we were firing a few messages over about it and stuff like that, like it's a good gateway film into the Dakota universe. I think this and Ring of Darkness are probably like the most of that era. I think if anyone listening to this wants to test the waters a bit, I think those are the ones where you can gauge whether you are going to like Dakota's style as a filmmaker.
Yeah, Leeches as well is a lot of fun.
I'd be hesitant to recommend that to someone though, because it's quite a lot of Leeches it's very sonically powerful. There's not a lot of dialogue and stuff in it. It tends to be it's a lot more avant-garde than something like Wolves of Wall Street or Ring of Darkness, which are very like linear A to B type stories. There's a lot of like weirdness going on in Leeches, and I think that a lot of people would be, if you don't like men in tighty whities in Wolves of Wall Street, you aren't going to like Leeches, which is ostensibly one great big cock joke. That's what that film is.
Yeah. Well, I was quite surprised actually. In the Wolves, they're not wearing white underwear; they're wearing black underwear, aren't they? And they're all black. They're all wearing matching black underwear.
We do have a very detailed bar chart about this, which covers from Dream Maniac onward. Just trying to we haven't gone through all his gay porn yet, but give us time.
In terms of his legitimate work, I genuinely have a breakdown in the back of one of my notebooks where when penises actually pop up. The first noted penis in a legitimate David Dakota film was in his 1993 film Naked Instinct.
That's why we love you guys.
Yeah, so there you go. Should you ever need that information, it is there for you to take right now.
Well, now it's on record. Guys, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been a very enlightening conversation about David Dakota and Wolves of Wall Street. We don't score the DTV throwbacks, but we do recommend you check them out. So, if we haven't put you off with the lack of werewolves and the homoerotic scenes, which, to be honest, when I saw that particular scene in question, I just thought, oh, nice one for the ladies. And left it at that. So there you go.
It's just beautiful people in it. Beautiful people.
It is
beautiful men, beautiful women.
The women is equally beautiful, and I just saw it as a sort of female empowerment sort of sex scene, basically, because they're sort of sat on the thrones of these guys sort of at their feet. So there. But it's available on Prime in a decent transfer as well. So check it out. So thanks to Matty and Dave for joining us on this episode. We hope to get you back on soon.
No, thanks for having us. It's been fun. Anything to spread the word of Dave Dakota?
Cool. Awesome, guys. Thank you very much.
No bother. What you're watching now? What you're going on to discuss?
We've got loads to do tonight. We've got Mike Tyson in Pharaoh's War.
Right.
We've got Olga Kurylenko in Sentinel, which is on Netflix. We've got Andy Serkis in SAS Red Notice.
Mm-hmm.
What's one I'm forgetting? There's another one.
Russian Raid.
Oh, Russian Raid. Yeah, Russian Raid.
And what's the throwback?
Legionnaire,
of course. Yeah.
Wow. Apparently, the 88 films disc. The commentary on that is absolutely fantastic. So I've been told.
It is. I've heard it. It's excellent. Both of them.
Yeah.
Which we will, of course, be mentioning.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Please do.
I've taken a couple of nuggets to mention, but I'm going to say I'm not going to. I don't want to mention any of it because that's a great incentive to go and buy the disc.
Don't give all the surprises away. In all honesty, though, I can't actually remember what the fuck we talked about on it because we recorded that months ago.
Well, I'll say I'm
be like the fourth commentary we did, and then it's just been delayed and delayed and delayed.
Yeah, because I thought it was coming out ages ago.
Yeah, well, they had obviously, off the record, they had a snafu with wherever they got the scan from. It turned out the title card that the opening crawl was in friggin' German. I think they got the German materials evidently. So I think it just got pinged back for a while and stuff. But yeah, but Dave was the one who actually he got Sheldon Lettich to do the commentary. He was the one who reached out to Sheldon. Yeah. And yet, people don't care about that, though, on the forums. All they care about is that we're missing the 30-minute making of from the original French DVD. Like, Jesus. Lighten up. The fact this film's getting released at all is incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking about this afternoon. I mentioned this when we do it. It's like, when it came out, it was like, obviously, nobody into mainstream cinema was going to give it a chance because it was Jean-Claude Van Damme. And then Jean-Claude Van Damme fans found out that he doesn't do any martial arts in it, so they weren't going to give it a chance either. And it just sort of fell in the gap in between, it's just sort of, which is a real shame because it's a damn good film.
It's true. It's truly an epic. I honestly think it's got the look and feel of an epic. There is part of it where I think, if you hadn't had Van Damme in it, if you had someone else in it, say for argument's sake, like Harrison Ford, if you had Harrison Ford in it and made it 36 minutes longer, it would have got a big screen bow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
The
beginning, like the first half hour, just reminds me of like Temple of Doom and Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's one of that. Yeah, really good.
Cool.
I'm really pleased that, Matty, you are a fan of The Patriot, as I am. Because I agree with you that this was a very interesting time for, action stars transitioning and into more dramatic roles, and very well shot films at that. So yeah, I'm hopeful for a good quality 88 films release of The Patriot.
I would love to see The Patriot, but I think that I do think that Steven Seagal has transcended from figure of hilarity to arch villain now because of all like the accusations that have come out about him. I mean, I do to a certain extent separate art from artist and stuff where possible, but then at the same time I just think that it probably would be a kiss of death releasing something like a Seagal flick. It'd be too contentious, even though I'd love for them to. I'd like to go back and do stuff like a collector's edition of Marked for Death. Yeah. I think that'd be, every disc that's came out over here has been vanilla. I don't even think there's any extras on any American ones or international ones. And I just think that that'd be maybe not so. I wouldn't be too bothered about getting like Steven Seagal interviews or anything like that because let's be, if
you're not going to get much out of him.
He talks shit. He just lie. And he probably can't remember making it.
That's right.
Whatever phase he's in at the minute. Like God, I remember back in the early 90s when he was doing that whole where he was going through the thinking he's black phase. I thought that was fantastic. Where he was on like Submerged, speaking in like patois and stuff. That was just absolutely insane. But I'd just to get like the directors and the writers involved because I think a lot of the time with these big action star vehicles like that, particularly when you've got someone with like Seagal whose ego is the size of Gibraltar, like the actual craftsmen who make it tend to get left behind. Even someone like Andrew Davis who made Under Siege. No one seems to. It's still seen as a Seagal vehicle.
I'd love to hear some honest audio commentaries on these films. The audio commentaries would be made. That's why I think Fred Olen Ray did one for Sniper Special Ops, but it was very sort of vanilla and full of. When it did mention the Seagal, it was all like praise, and it was like, what are you talking about? He's terrible. He's the worst thing in the movie. What's going on?
Yeah, maybe that's in terms of like relativity. He was great for the day that he was on set.
Yeah.
He was great because he was sat down. Like he was sat down for 6 hours and he had his spectacles with him so he could read the cue cards. And I say that as a fan of Sniper. I say that as a fan of Sniper Special Ops. I like that.
I like the bits he's not in. The bits
of
Rob Van
Damme
are actually pretty good. You go to Chinese takeaway, right? And they got the lucky cat that waves at you.
Yeah.
That's Steven Seagal in that film. That is as much as he does.
I can take that though. I mean, I like it. I like it. It's been. Obviously, I'm going off memories here from first seeing it, but I just liked the fact that the day that it came out, I think. I just liked the fact that I could go in Asda and buy a Fred Olen Ray film. I think that's probably why I'm so forgiving over it, because any Fred Olen Ray film is better than no Fred Olen Ray film, as far as I'm concerned.
Where'd you stand on Chris Olen Ray?
I really like Chris Olen Ray. I think he's great. I think he's coming into his own.
Yeah, he's definitely doing much higher profile stuff with like Assault on Station 33 as it's been released.
It's out tomorrow, isn't it? I think I'm swinging past Asda tomorrow on the vein. Hope that it'll be on the shelves in there. Obviously, I am going to be buying my essential goods as well. I'm not just going in for a social call to buy a DVD. I will be getting my milk and bread. But yeah, I really like Chris Olen Ray. I like him a lot.
Did he do work with the Asylum?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he did.
Yeah, he did. God, Dave probably knows more than me about the
2, 3, and 5. 2, 3, and 5 had a shark attack. He wasn't there for number 6.
Yeah, they were the Asylum, weren't they? Yeah. I mean, I know he did that Mercenaries as well, which is great, and that was for the Asylum.
The Zoe Bell one, yeah.
Zoe Bell,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, guys.
Yeah. Good. Speak to you soon.
Awesome. Yes, thanks very much, gents.
See you later, guys.
Okay.
Take care.
Cheers,
Bye.
Bye. And that is the end of this week's show. So thanks to Rich and Steve for covering Nemesis and Rose earlier.
No problem.
No problem at all.
No problem at all. Also, thanks to Matty and Dave for joining us and discussing the works of Dave Dakota and Wolves of Wall Street. You will find links to their website and the podcast in the footnotes, so please check them out. They do some really great stuff. And thanks to Will, of course, for joining me to discuss the 2 horror films this week. Don't forget to check out our Short Shots podcast, where me and Rich take an exclusive look at some of the recent short films. And also check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Other than that, thank you for listening and tune in next time.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tune in again next time.